Welcome to Pay It Forward, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mindy Laval, and on behalf of Fresno State and the Lyle Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, thank you all for joining us as we kick off spring 2021 for Pay It Forward. It's really wonderful to have so many of you here today with us that have attended Pay It Forward in the past, both in person and on webinar. And a special thank you to all of those who are joining us today. Since late 2015, Pay It Forward has been providing an avenue to bring together Fresno State students of all disciplines and a wide, diverse network of community professionals. From the beginning, there have been three primary goals. The first goal is to create an interdisciplinary forum where students throughout the Fresno State campus, regardless of school, college, or department, could meet for meaningful conversation and dialogue with community professionals from Fresno and our surrounding areas. The second goal is the commitment to provide a free sit-down lunch at the event for both students and community-wide professionals. Sharing a meal together provides a sense of community and establishes a foundation for networking and more impactful conversation. And the final goal is that we always feature a speaker or a panel of speakers with roots in the Central Valley that are asked to share his or her professional journey with the audience with the primary intent to inspire our students. Over the years, we have transformed to meet new opportunities and create additional value. We've extended ongoing invitations to Fresno City College, as well as Reilly College, and Patino Entrepreneurial High School, who are all regular attendees of Pay It Forward. Prior to COVID-19 in March 2020, we held 24 in-person luncheons, 2 to 3 per semester. However, given the restrictions brought on by COVID-19, we made the decision to convert the programming into a webinar series. Although this did not allow us to achieve all of the 3 goals that we aspired to achieve, it did continue to provide important programming to our students and our community at large, and has continued to attract well over 200 people for each session. Today, thanks to you, we have in attendance over 250 community members, students, and faculty, as well as administration. This is our 4th webinar since March 2020, where we abruptly had to stop. It's hard to believe that it has been 1 year ago this month that we began the unexpected journey through COVID-19. As we considered programming for this semester, we felt a need to have a session on the importance of embracing change in times of uncertainty. Specifically, the need to pivot both personally and professionally as a response to challenges brought to the forefront due to COVID-19. As all of you very much are aware, this past year, the transition to online learning and remote working happened in a matter of days. It was traumatic, jarring, and chaotic for many. Because most of us naturally find change challenging, we thought it would be valuable to focus on this topic with examples of how local companies and professionals have pivoted during the year in order to survive, or in some cases, even thrive. So let's get started. I am excited and thrilled that Kathleen Scott, and if I could have Kathleen join me, I am excited and thrilled that Kathleen Scott graciously said yes to participate in today's Pay It Forward. Kathleen will be kicking off our session by talking about change and the one element that is constant in all change. She will rejoin us after our panel of speakers to introduce us to a couple of quick tips and tools that can help us navigate change more successfully. Kathleen received her MBA from Fresno State, and until this past January served as the Director of Organizational Excellence and Administrative Operations at Fresno State, a role she has held during most of her tenure that started back in 2013. In January, Kathleen was named the new Vice President of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities in Washington, D.C. We caught her right before she moved back east. Prior to Fresno State, Kathleen worked in leadership positions for the United Way and St. Agnes Medical Center here in Fresno. Kathleen has deep experience in change management, the understanding of how people and organizations experience change and what is needed to help make that change a bit smoother. It is my great privilege to introduce Kathleen Scott.
Thank you, Mindy. I'm so deeply honored to be a part of this session today. I've been an attendee at Pay It Forward luncheons for many years, and now to be a part of this amazing panel and talk with you all about change is really a great privilege and honor. I may not be an employee at Fresno State anymore, but I will always be a Bulldog, and my heart will always be here with all of you at Fresno State. I want to just send a special greeting out to the students that are joining us today. A deep bow to every one of you for the extraordinary change you have endured this past year. We know it has been hard, and you have risen to the occasion, and you have endured, and you have navigated this change with resilience and strength and courage, and we're so proud of you. Another shout out, because I know some of you are out there, to my friends and colleagues and coworkers and staff, and I treasure you all and I miss you, and I'm delighted to not be able to see your faces, but know that you're with me here today. So we are going to talk about change, and that's a conversation that I could have for hours and hours, but I only have a few minutes to frame this conversation. And before I present some of the research or this, the famous four-letter word around change, I want to ask you all to join me in a chat race. So get your fingers ready on the chat button, and I want you to think about the first feeling or emotion that you have when you think change is coming. What is that gut feeling when you hear change is coming that surfaces for you? So go ahead and chat your response, and I'm going to share my screen as we see all of your responses coming in. I'm seeing that looks like they're coming in through Q&A, and so I just have to change my Zoom setting here. Okay, fear. So go ahead and send your chat responses through Q&A, and we'll just make Zoom work. Anxiety, yes. Fear, anxiety, prepare. Absolutely. When we're prepared for change, it's a whole lot easier to navigate. Opportunity. I love the opportunity perspective, right? Anxiety, stress, happiness, smiles, excitement, apprehension. So whatever your emotion is, it's real, and it can be very difficult to navigate. And what we have to all recognize is change is so much a part of what we will have to deal with forever, whether it's a pandemic, an unexpected pandemic, as we've all experienced over the last 12 months, or whether it's a change of technology or a change of job or a change of lifestyle. You're getting married, you're having children, you're moving across the country. Change brings with us both these elements of positive and negative emotions: excitement, fear, anxiety, stress, transition, right? So I want to leave you today with some tools on how to manage those and how to navigate that. And what I'll start with is a quote. One of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King is, "Our very survival depends on our ability to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change." All right, so a couple of just getting framed with the language around change. There are three states of change: the current state, where we are today. As of this very moment, I still live with you all in Fresno, California. The transition state, what happens in between where we are today and what the future state is going to look like at a later date, right? Whether we've adopted a new technology, we've moved our family across the country, we started a new job, or we've survived a pandemic. And for our faculty colleagues, we experienced a very significant change going from a current state of how we taught in 2020, in February of 2020, and how we teach today in March of 2021. And our students experienced a very similar dramatic change in how they learned and engaged with services on the Fresno State campus in February of 2020 and what that looks like today. The important thing to think about when we look at the 3 states of change, moving from a current state to a future state, is the current state, whether it's good or bad, is comfortable, right? It's what we know. Whether it's a job that maybe we're dissatisfied with and looking to transition to, it's something that we know, right? So there's some element of stability that we know around the current state. The future state is uncertain, right? We hope it's better. We can envision it. We cast our eyes on it to get there, but it's very uncertain. And then everything in the transition state is the messy middle. That's where anxiety comes up. That's where the stress comes up, because it's like jumping off of a trapeze from the current state of a solid footing and a solid ground into a future state, and that feeling that we get as we fly across the transition. Okay, so one of the things that I want to make clear when we think about organizational change is organizations don't change. It's the people within those organizations that change, our practices, our procedures, how we do our work, how we go about our business. So when we navigate change, or when we're managing others navigating any kind of change, we have to think of the individuals. So if we're a team of 25 or a team of 25,000, every individual in that organization is going to go from a current state of stability and comfort through a very rocky transitional period, through the transition state, into a future state of what the new normal will look like. If we manage to change effectively, all of the boxes move along with us smoothly. But the reality is, too often we manage change and end up with what we call the Swiss cheese effect. Some people have come along for the journey and done it successfully, and others we leave behind. So understanding some of the tools around managing change and some of the research around change helps us bring people from the current state into the future state in a safe, stable, productive way, and so that they become a part of that future state permanently and they embrace the change as opposed to feeling like it was imposed upon us. All right, so here's the magic lesson of today. I want to ask you all, and you can chat in your responses through our Q&A. What's the one thing that we can all count on with any kind of change? And it's a 4-letter word, and it's the kind of 4-letter word that you could use with your grandma. What's the one thing that is constant with all change? Taxes, love, hope, cost, time, fear. I'm not sure there's any wrong answer here, but I'm looking for a particular 4-letter word. Learning, no pain, no gain. I love seeing so many familiar faces as I scan the list. All right. Love, hope, learning. Great responses. No one's landed on it yet. The 4-letter word that is consistent with all change is loss. Whether it's a great, extraordinary, life-changing change like getting married, having a child, or changing jobs for a new opportunity, we're still losing something, right? If we're getting married, we're losing identity. I was Kathleen O'Rourke up until 30 years ago, and that was in an identity that I knew and embraced. And then overnight, with the transition to marriage, I had a new last name. I was a married person. So even when it's a positive, life-changing, beautiful change like marriage or the birth or an adoption of a child, there is still a sense of loss. And the things that we lose are loss of identity, loss of structure, right? I had a job at Fresno State for the past 8 years that I loved, and I had a predictable, structured environment. I got up, I drove to campus, I did my best to add value and contribute to the organization. It was a structure that gave me a sense of security. I'm embarking on a new journey now, but I'm still losing a structure that I knew of. Okay, so loss is present in all different forms of change. We also lose a sense of control, depending upon the nature of, and certainly the pandemic gives us an example of a loss where we lost control. This was something that we couldn't plan for. We went from current state to future state, and we're still evolving in that. in a matter of days and overnight, how we taught, how we learned, how we worked, how we managed, right? How we navigated the state of a pandemic. So loss of control, loss of turf, loss of future, loss of attachments, and loss of purpose, right? So all changes, no matter big or small, personal or professional, we experience some form of loss. What I challenge you all with, and here's where I'll turn it back to Mindy to introduce our extraordinary panelists, is even when we experience that loss, we can control how we respond. That's the key to navigating change. It's a choice on whether I'm going to embrace the new technology or the new job, or that I'm going to have to do things differently. And you've got some panelists and some stories that you'll hear in the coming moments of extraordinary examples of how we chose to embrace change. So Mindy, back to you to introduce our panelists, and let's hear about those stories.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I would like to turn it over to our panelists now, although I think, Kathleen, I could sit here and listen to you for hours. It's such a fascinating topic, and one that I don't think you ever can stop learning about. Well, today, each of our speakers will share his or her experience during this past year, and then we will open up for questions from the audience. Given this is a webinar, and because we've already had a nice warm-up from Kathleen, please send any questions that you have via the Q&A feature on Zoom. The Lyle Center team will be sending me the questions, and we will be able to answer them during our session after the panelists are finished. We will now hear from the panel of local professionals, all Fresno State alums and a soon-to-be alum. Our panelists joining us today represent different industries, some organizations that have been established for decades, and others recent startups. However, they have shared in many things in common, in addition to being bulldogs. What they share is their resilience, their fortitude, their hard work, and in many cases, just pure on grit to maneuver during this past turbulent year. Each experience illustrates a unique approach taken to survive, and in some cases, thrive during this unpredictable and unexpected time. Each story is very different. Let's get started with our first panelist, and I'd like to introduce, it's actually my great honor to introduce Jim Pardini. Jim, if you'd like to join us. Jim is a 1968 graduate of Fresno State, and for over 5 decades, his family business, Pardini's Catering and Banquets, has been serving Fresno and the surrounding communities. As many of you know, Jim works closely with his 2 sons, and together they form a mighty team as they go about really servicing the Central Valley with amazing products and service. Since COVID, as you might expect, the catering business has been especially bad hit. And however, as I thought about today's session, and as I discussed with Jim as we were talking about today, the first company that really came to mind was Pardini's. I've been so impressed with some of the things that they've had to do to be able to continue to provide their customers with an opportunity to receive their products, their wonderful menus and food. But most importantly, they've pivoted in different directions and modified their traditional business model to adapt to this unexpected change. It's my great honor to introduce Jim Pardini. Jim?
Thank you, Mindy. It's my honor to be here today and represent the restaurant catering industry as opposed to some of the other things that we do. But right now, we were particularly hit very, very hard for this COVID. We weren't expecting it. Obviously, like most people, this shut down our business so rapidly. So we had to figure out a few things, how we were going to continue to maintain. We have a workforce of close to 300 people when we're completely geared up. We do not only catering, but we also do concessions. And I just heard maybe we're going to have a little Fresno State football this year because we do the concessions at the football. We also do the baseball and the softball. So there are some bright lights in the future, but we had to maintain a year of pretty bleak times. Some of the stuff that we were able to do was look at our restaurant. For example, we have the annex kitchen, which is attached to our building, and they really did a great job of doing a lot of takeout, more takeout than they've ever done. They really set it up wonderfully. One thing in particular that they did there was kind of create their own little grocery store in the restaurant. On one end of the restaurant, they had, specialty items that we manufacture here at the annex. I mean, their own homemade pastas and sauces and stuff like that, in addition to things that were lacking in the grocery store. So we said, wow, what can we do? We have a pretty good source of foodstuffs and that kind of product. So we ended up talking to our purveyors. We got, things like toilet paper, towels, things like that, paper towels, things like that, and put them out there in addition to our food. And that really worked out for quite a while. And then we kind of figured out, well, we maybe not need it as much because the grocery stores finally caught up to all the panic buying that people went through. And that was a real difficult time for all of us. Some of the other stuff that we were able to do with the catering side was we created these family meals. And so we had it online. Of course, we did a lot of stuff online, and we did a lot of advertising that way. And we created these family meals. People could come and pick them up because there weren't any restaurants open. So we were able to have them come pick up their meal, and they could either prepare it or have it ready to go, however they wanted it to do. And that was a little bit of a different departure for us, also a little bit of a change, because we don't normally do a lot of takeout on the catering side. We did some takeout with the annex, but not as much as we were doing. So anyway, on the family dinners, that was really going pretty well, but it really wasn't enough to keep everybody that busy. And we were thinking, how are we going to keep these people busy? So we ended up having at Fresno State, we had a kitchen trailer that we used to supplement some of the sweet catering and stuff like that. It wasn't a concession stand, but it was a pretty nice trailer that we used for that. And I said to my boys, I said, why don't we put this thing on the corner of Shaw and Van Ness? It's a pretty busy intersection. And let's try something. And one of my sons said, yeah, Dad, he said, we could do like a gourmet hot dog stand or something like that. I said, you know what? Let's do something above that. Let's do something that's more like what we normally do. So we decided that we knew we had the equipment. We decided to do a tri-tip sandwich, and that went over well. But in the same time, the boys came up with a wonderful recipe for chicken sandwich, a kind of a hot chicken sandwich. And that evolved into being 2 or 3 things different. And as we grow, believe it or not, it's been a year, and we were talking about that yesterday to my sons. I can't believe it's been 1 year since this whole thing came down. And it's been extremely successful. And we're kind of talking about, well, now what are we going to take up our parking lot when the catering gears back up again, or what are we going to do? So those were a couple of the biggest things that we had. Now on the other side of the thing, we were contacted by one of our city councilmen, and the city had what they called a SAFER program, which was a distribution of groceries to different senior citizen areas. So we worked on it, and we actually got our banquet room, of all things, became a warehouse, and we got a crew of people which was great because we were trying to keep people working. And we boxed up fresh groceries for everybody. And we ended up doing about 500 boxes per day, 3 days a week. And we would take them to different parks and we would distribute them through, people just drive up and pick up a box and there they go. So it was really a good thing. The city of Fresno had some money from the federal government, and it was really a good way to use that money for them, and it helped us pay our people. Not a huge profit thing, but a wonderful idea. And that continued on for a long time. It continued on for about 6 or 7 months. So those things kind of kept us going, and that was something that we had never done. We bought all the groceries ourselves from our different local, tried to buy it all from our local purveyors, and distributed them. So there was like 13 or 14 items per box. So it took a crew. I mean, it was an assembly line. Now, when we serve our big banquets and stuff like that, we usually do it on an assembly line basis. Somebody puts the vegetables, somebody puts the protein, somebody puts the potato or whatever it is. And that's kind of the way we did this. We had an individual person doing each item, and the boxes moved along fast. And it was really, really very good. We were very fortunate that we got one of our biggest purveyors, which I'm sure Fresno State's very familiar with, is OK Produce, the Matoyan family, gave us a big reefer van, and we were able to hold all that stuff during the time that it came in. And then we had 2 of our refrigerated units holding it also and distributing it. So that was probably the biggest thing that was out of our bailiwick that we did during this period of time. Now we're working on the future. Now we're working on what we can do once they open up the gates and let us have some events. Again, we're going to do Fresno State. Looks like Fresno State's going to play football, so we're looking forward to that. And looks like there'll be a few banquets down the road. I don't know exactly when that's all going to happen, but it has kept our people working through this whole pandemic. It was a disaster in the beginning, just thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do? And we came through it pretty well. We're very, very fortunate. So that's kind of that whole scenario. I mean, going backwards at the annex, we had a driveway there, and we actually put in a patio, we called it. Had lighting in there and tents and fogging machines and everything during the hot months. And that was a kind of a roll of the dice. Is that going to work? Are people going to want to eat out there? Well, it's been pretty darn good. So all in all, as much as our sales have dropped immensely, we've still been able to pull through that whole scenario.
Thank you so much, Jim. I have already a slew of questions, but we'll wait to the end when we have our panel discussion. But thank you so much for sharing, and I applaud you for keeping your employees working.
Well, that was the key.
That was the key. At this point, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Her name is Monisha Edwards, and Monisha is the founder of Truth in Advertising, as well as a number of other brands, including Scent and Fire Candle Company, which has achieved national recognition. She's a graduate from the Craig School of Business at Fresno State, where she received her degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing. I'm very excited that Monisha is with us today to share her experiences as an entrepreneur and the path that she has taken during the past year. It's my honor to introduce Monisha Edwards. Monisha?
Hi, Mindy, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited about this panel. I am like Mindy said, the founder and brand strategist for Truth Branding Agency, and then I'm also the founder and Chief Chandler for Scent and Fire Candle Company. We are an all natural and green certified green manufacturer of eco luxury soy candles and scented consumables that are made from raw and recycled material. We're known for enhancing the aromatic experiences through curated playlists and online community building. Last year was a whirlwind for me personally. It was a whirlwind for both of my companies. At the very beginning of the announcement of the pandemic, I had, like right before the announcement, I started getting emails from some of my clients telling me that they had to cancel their events. So when I was fully running my branding agency full time, from 2016 all the way up until 2020. At the beginning of the year, I want to say between January and April, a majority of my revenue would come from event branding. I would brand conferences, festivals, different music events, empowerment events, and things like that. And a lot of my clients were getting sick, or their employees were getting sick, and so they were pulling their contracts, canceling their events and things like that. And when the pandemic was announced, I had fully had to figure out what I was going to do with my business, because all of my clients at that point pulled their projects. And it was only because everyone didn't know what was going on. They didn't know to what extent, they didn't know what COVID was. None of us knew what COVID was. They didn't know how long we were going to be confined to our homes. And so that kind of left me with trying to figure out how I was going to pay my bills, how I was going to pay my contractors. And I knew that I had my candle company. And one of the things that I will always turn to is my aromatherapy, just for mental relaxation, to help keep my anxiety attacks down. That's one of the reasons why I started the candle company. It was due to me being in a very dark space. My father, I had to become his caretaker for a little while when he was shot and paralyzed from the waist down. And I was very depressed at the time, and I ended up discovering aromatherapy, and then I got into candle making and then launched my candle company. So during that time of me, having to be in the house all the time and not knowing what was going on in the world, I turned to candle pouring. And then by me being a natural brand strategist, I wanted to create an experience. Obviously, at the time, my company had already had a little bit of traction because I was doing a lot of pop-ups and things like that. So people were starting to know who I was and know what Scent and Fire was at the time. And I thought about people being in their homes and what they would possibly want to do. And so I created a line of quarantine themed candles. I started with 3 different candles. The names are Socially Distant, Living Room Flex, and Shelter and Chill. And I paired each candle and each scent with a different playlist, because I knew that people were going to be at home. They're probably either going to be watching TV or listening to music. And so I wanted to create that experience. I also created a self-care checklist. And then a friend of mine, she has a mobile cocktail bar service. And I partnered with her at the very beginning. And we created 2 cocktails. One was called the Quarantini, and the other one, no, I'm sorry. One was called the Quarantini and the other one was called Corona Rita. And we created these survival kits where you would get a candle, a cocktail, with your playlist delivered to your home, to your front porch. And when we posted about that on Facebook, that took off really well. And in the midst of the survival kits taking off, my quarantine line had taken off as well and went semi-viral in the Central Valley. And so Fox News had reached out to me and wanted to hear my story about my pivot from a service-based business to working full-time in my my product-based business. And then from there, my story ended up being picked up by Fox, the major network of Fox. And I started getting interview requests and things like that. And it was really hard for me to manage the interview requests and then me making the candles, because at the time I was making all of the candles myself. And then my friend, she was making all the cocktails, and we're having 15 to 20 deliveries every single day. And so that kind of took a toll on us. We actually hired a delivery service to help us deliver the survival kits, but it just got so overwhelming that we had to end up pausing that for a little while, and we never really got back to it because I ended up being picked up by the Today Show, and they wanted to share my story. And once my story was shared, I ended up getting a ton of orders, way too many orders at the time, to be completely honest with you. And so I ended up having to move out of my 1-bedroom condo into a warehouse. A friend of mine has a company, and he has this big warehouse that he really wasn't using. So I was fortunate enough to be blessed with that space. And the local chamber here, the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce, they helped me hire my first few contractors. So I had about six people helping me at the time. So I just like literally went from a living room one day to a manufacturing facility the next day. And from there, I just started churning out thousands of candles every month. And then the traction continued to grow. From there, the unfortunate situations with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor happened. And then that brought light to African Americans and Black owned businesses. And my business kind of grew exponentially from there as well. And it's just been continuing to grow. At this point, my company isn't even 2 years old yet. It turns 2 next month in April. We've done partnerships with Showtime, HBO, a small partnership with HBO. We've done things for CBS. We're working on a collaboration with Palmer's right now, Palmer's cocoa butter. So we're still continuing to grow, and I'm actually expanding out to another city so that we can continue to grow. Hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, we will have a distribution center for Scent and Fire in 3 different states. Honestly, the growth has been amazing, but with growth comes growing pains. I know that for a fact. I wish I would have done a few things differently, but the great thing about the whole situation is that I was able to grow. My company was able to grow. I was able to provide jobs. I'm still providing jobs for people in my community. And I'm just really proud of where Scent and Fire is going. And at scale, we're going to create a women's reentry employment program as well as a recycling program. So I'm really excited about everything that's going to be happening.
Oh, Monisha, I'm so excited for you. And it just proves, I think, that you were able to pivot, and your story is so unique and so exciting. And I'm just so thrilled. And now I am also a happy customer as of recent, because if you haven't all been on her, hopefully you'll go visit her site and see all the wonderful scents she has. Well, we'll come back afterwards, and you can ask Monisha any questions that you might have about her journey, but I'll go ahead and move on to our next speaker. Thanks, Monisha. Okay. As I mentioned, all of our stories are very unique and different, but this is what this period of time has been for all of us. And we're going to continue on with my dear friend, Kathy Horstman-Hubert, who is with us as our next panelist. And Kathy is a 1984 graduate of the Craig School of Business. She started her career in insurance shortly thereafter in 1985 and is currently the Vice President of Group Sales and Employee Benefits at Horseman Financial and Insurance Services, a family-run business headquartered here in Fresno. New York Horseman Financial and Insurance Services are also the New York Life insurance agents. And New York Life is one of the country's top 10 insurance companies. And in 2020, Kathy qualified for this past year, Kathy qualified for New York Life's 2020 Premier Executive Council. Since the onset of COVID-19, Horseman Financial Services and New York Life have made many pivots to ensure ongoing customer excellence. It is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, Kathy Horseman Hubert. Kathy?
Thank you, Mindy. It's great to see you today, as always. And it's really wonderful to be here with all of you. This is an exciting time. I know the pandemic has been a little bit trying for all of us, but there's been so much growth. And I think so many of us and all of us have achieved so much to get through it. As Mindy mentioned, I am a New York Life agent, but we have a family business. And I couldn't be more proud of it. My father started the business 62 years ago with my mother. My brother joined along with myself. We joined our father. I joined him 36. My brother joined him a little less than that, maybe 35. And growing up, I think my brother and I can always remember my father saying on a Monday, "Today I'm unemployed." So for insurance agents, every Monday morning, if you didn't have a full book of appointments, you were really unemployed. If you sold your best case, then you had to go find your next case. So until you did that, you were unemployed. So for our business, we are continually in transition. As my father grew his book of business, his customers grew their own businesses. And then that's how we fell into the employee benefit market. And over the years, that has just grown substantially. We're fortunate to have a wonderful team that work with us. Kathy Sunday's been with us for 35 years. She's an expert in her field in employee benefits. We have Araceli Gonzalez. She's also an expert, and she does our backup and our well, what we used to call our illustrations, but you'll see how some of that has changed. Now she is changing and working on our new presentations and doing some of the new things that we've innovated to reach out during the times of pandemic. We also have Lillian, who is does all of our life work. We have Kathy Seiler, who does all of our packets and all of our printing. And we have Kirsten, who does all of our finances. And we are in the process of hiring. So again, transition. So one thing is clear is for us, we're always looking for our next opportunity of change. We have about 140 companies here in the Valley, and some who have locations throughout the United States, and we handle all their employee benefits. We handle their health, their life, their disability, and their vision. A couple of years ago, I had this deep dread that we needed to transition and do more in case something happens to our employee benefit health segment of that business. And that's always been kind of the breathing down our neck is government run healthcare. Something would happen that it would take the agent out of that part of the business. And so that being a concern, we joined in, and we call it a partnership, and it's a beautiful, beautiful relationship with Juliana Franco, and she is with New York Life. And we have added another benefit to our book of business, and we now do a voluntary employee benefit, and it's a New York Life whole life insurance guarantee issue. And over the last several years, we've been doing it. It's been amazing. We've put it in most of our groups now. And Juliana and I have set records with New York Life on the sales. But most importantly, the gratitude of the employees has been enormous. So things were moving along really well for us. The company was doing well. Things were doing pretty well. We weren't really concerned. And then the pandemic hit. And we were in a family crisis at that point too. I wouldn't say crisis. I would say we were at a turning point with our family. Is my mother was in the process of passing away after a very, very long illness. And I'll never forget March 16th, my mom passed away. And March 16th, my brother and I were together with my mother. My father was calling in, and we were all together and with mom. And shortly thereafter, we were then planning, what are we going to do with the pandemic? And we had to pivot so fast after losing my mother, to my brother calling our tech person, to us putting all of our computers, setting up computers and all of our programs in all of our employees' homes. We didn't know for how long. We didn't even know if we'd use them, but we just thought maybe we better do it. And we needed to do it now, and we needed to do it immediately. And timing wasn't great, but mom, being in the business, would understand. She'd be the first person to say, go get this done. And so off we went. You know, I'm notoriously a positive person. I'm continually positive, and most people would feel that I'm a positive person. And so, unbeknownst to us, New York Life is going to shut our office down 3 days later. And they tell all of us we can't come back because we're housed in the New York Life building. Everybody takes their things and everybody goes home. So my positive outlook is, well, this won't be very long. And for the first time ever, I set up everything at home and I wore leggings and big shirts to work. And being that positive person, I read the paper, what there was of the paper every morning, and especially on Monday, I read my favorite person, and that's Harvey McKay. And I'm a big believer that you can have fun at work and you can be serious, but most of all, you have to be enthusiastic. And Harvey McKay believes that you have to build great relationships and do the right thing. And you have to show your clients continual appreciation. And during this pandemic, it gave us a great time to think about this appreciation to our clients. And what does it really look like? And how are we going to do it when we can't show up at their office and we can't take them cookies and we can't do our normal things? And a very wise man had this put in every one of his employees' workstations. And it said, if you think there is something more important than a customer, think again. So we truly believe that the customer is the most important. So now how are we going to reach that customer? And will our businesses still provide benefits for their employees? Will they be able to survive? And if they don't survive and they don't pay their premiums, we won't have cash flow. So I quickly, which some businesses, other businesses might have done, is I quickly jumped on board and picked up the PPP loan. I then picked up an SBA loan, and I had backup money just in case something went wrong. And gloriously, our open enrollment started. We did them a little clumsily the same way with the same spreadsheets. We did it by phone. We sent them to them. We did them awkwardly, we'll admit, because we hadn't had any real systems yet in place. But all of our employers renewed their benefits the exact way they were the year before. They took their renewals, and most didn't pass them on to their employees. The concern they have for the employees and all they're going through during the pandemic, they did not want their employees impacted on their health insurance because they knew how important their benefits were. It was overwhelming, and it was really, really heartwarming. So for us, we then pivoted to using a flipping book, Canva, and then we also started using Calendarly. So now we're doing everything online. If you have a chance, look at Flipping Book, look at Canva, look at Calendarly. Great way to meet with your clients, great way to do presentations, and a great way to be able to show yourself in the most professional manner. Your clients can make appointments with you without ever speaking to you, and you can have great meetings that way. So one thing, we were really lucky. Our income never changed. We had safety nets. It was a great year, business-wise. But I want to leave you with this thought. I want to say to each and every one of you to remember that every day is a new day, and every day we can pick up ourselves and make ourselves something new. And so never get so down to think that we can't change or we can't do something different. And my best example of that, maybe some of you have heard it before, is a wonderful man, Dr. Petrucci. And Dr. Petrucci was 91 years old. His wife was passing away across the hall from my mother. And he came out, and I said, "How are you doing, doctor?" And he said, "You know, Kathy, I just started to meet with a counselor because I had to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life with Josephine gone." 91 years old. If a man 91 can figure out what to do with the rest of his life, each and every one of us can figure out what to do the rest of ours. So get in there. Don't let the pandemic get anyone down, and keep moving, and good luck. And thank you, Mindy, for letting me be here today.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I really appreciate it. And it's wonderful. And we have several questions that have come in for you too. So we'll come back around to you in a few minutes. I'd now like to introduce our fourth speaker, and that is Calvin Kamer. Calvin is the owner of Next Gen Escape Rooms and graduated in 2019 from the Craig School of Business with a degree in business and entrepreneurship. It was while he was at Fresno State that he began his entrepreneurial journey and started Next Gen Escape during his senior year in school. Calvin received the Student Entrepreneur Award presented by the Fresno Chamber of Commerce. When the impact of COVID hit last March, Next Gen was a young startup company and definitely challenged it. The COVID definitely challenged its future. However, due to resilience and perseverance, Next Gen is surviving. It is with great pleasure to introduce my friend, Calvin Kamer, to share his experiences of this past year. Calvin.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mindy. And thank you for inviting me here. It's definitely interesting being on the other side of the panel. It's kind of fun. A little bit about me. I own Next Gen Escape. It's an escape room in Fresno. It's about half a mile away from Fresno State. I also have a podcast that I co-host with a fellow Fresno State alum, Tyler Turk, called Slicing Startups, where we talk about both of our unique businesses more in detail. That's my little self-plug at the beginning. But this last year has been really challenging for me and my partner, Kiara. There have been many times where explicitly bad news happened, and we just kind of thought, what are we going to do? And luckily, all those times when it's happened, we kind of buckled down. We kind of put our nose to the grindstone. I think that's the saying, and just tried to figure it out. And just to preface it, I am in a dungeon in the escape room. I figured might as well show it off. Those aren't real candles. I don't know how it really looks on Zoom, but this room is one of our favorite ones, so might as well let you guys see it. There were a few things that kind of happened that really set us back. Before, we had only been open for about 6 months when the shutdown started, and we were one of the first like escape rooms or entertainment places to shut down because we didn't know in those first few weeks like how severe COVID was going to be, and I didn't want anyone coming here and getting sick just to play an escape room. I thought that'd be crazy. We don't really want to do that, so. We shut down a little bit prematurely, but I think it was for the right decision. So I don't regret doing that. I definitely think that was the right call, but we shut down, and there was 2 weeks where we kind of took a mandatory vacation. We were all on the 2 weeks we're going to be closed down, and maybe we'll reopen. And 2 weeks went by, and we weren't really going to be reopening anytime soon. So my partner and I kind of got a little stir crazy. We were going to work, but there was no work to do. So we decided, we didn't know how long this was going to take. So we wanted to do something new. We wanted to add in new products or new services that we can do for customers now that everything's shut down. And so we got really scrappy, and we got a cargo container from like Costco. It's like this big yellow thing. And we turned that box into an escape room. We found all the spare pieces and bits and extra puzzles that we have, and we turned this big box into a game that we can deliver to homes in Fresno and Clovis. And we did it. We didn't know if it was going to be successful. We knew that we had to try. We had to do something because otherwise people aren't coming out here. We're not making any money. So we wanted to do something a little different. And what we found out is that even though COVID is happening, birthdays are still a thing. Birthdays don't necessarily get canceled. You still are going to have a birthday. And we realized that, since you can't go out to do something to celebrate, you're going to do something in. So we kind of figured out that this was like the perfect kind of market fit to kind of promote for birthday parties, whether or not you're a kid or even an adult and you just want something fun to do at home instead of just watching Netflix or whatever, So it took off and it did really well. We launched our first game. It was like a zombie theme. Our second kind of box was a serial killer theme. That one's been a fan favorite. And then recently we had a pirate chest that you actually plug into the wall, and it has special effects and everything in it, and even a Christmas box. And those all did really great up until, we were open, I think doing it for like a month or two. We got a notice from the city of Fresno to shut down and cease all operations to follow the guidelines. And it's like, what? We are following the guidelines. What's going on? And since we're categorized as family entertainment centers, even though we don't have people coming here, we can't be taking our games there, which was just really crushing because we thought that we found a way to make it work. We sanitized these games after, every time they get played. We made sure we delivered it in the safest way possible with no contact delivery. Yet we're still getting forced to shut down. And then the confusing thing, about 2 weeks later, Fresno announces all businesses are authorized. All businesses are essential. So everyone's opening. So we were told to shut down. And then 2 weeks later, we were back open for as usual, business as usual throughout June with COVID policies in place, obviously. But we kind of realized that we didn't want to rely on that again to happen. So we realized we don't want anything to block us from doing what we do and providing games for families and providing games for friends who really need some sort of like kind of distraction from the day-to-day life and all the depression and mental health that comes from COVID. Getting just something that just breaks up the monotony of your days was what we really wanted to deliver. And, our motto here is to make life fun. And that's to make life fun for us, for our customers, for our employees, for everyone involved. We want to make their day delightful. And that's what we really focused on. And if we got shut down again, which we knew was going to happen, and if we couldn't do the boxes again, which we felt like that could happen, we wanted to do something else. And we realized that we have these empty rooms we have this dungeon room that hardly got played. It was open for about 2 weeks before we got shut down in March of last year. We have the space, let's use it. So we actually created virtual escape rooms where you can play it over Zoom. And I've been told that it's probably the best Zoom conference call that they've ever had in 2020, which is a fun thing to hear. We had our employees come out, and it's kind of like a video game at that point where it's super interactable and you get to talk with the employee and work things out. And it was really interesting. It was great because we got to reach a new market that we had never really experienced before. And we had people from New Mexico, New York, and even Germany come and play it, where they would have normally never played one of our games like that before. So it was really interesting being able to kind of broaden our horizons a little bit. And things were going pretty well. They did really good, but we kind of realized at a certain point that we weren't getting enough hours for our employees, and we wanted to make sure that they were taken care of. So we tried to figure out what are other possible ways that we can bring our escape games to people. And one thing that we had been pitching but never really like pulled the trigger on quite yet is in the state guidelines, it specifically states that we can't be open indoors. But what if we did it outdoors? What would that look like? How could we do it? And all that fun stuff. And so we planned it out, and 4 weeks later we created Fresno's first outdoor escape room in our parking lot. And it was great because our employees were getting hours. People wanted an excuse to go outside and to do something, and it was a breath of fresh air for I think a lot of people involved. And we did that from like October till November. And then everybody knows what happens in December. We get like an early onset winter that is freezing. So we're like, all right, well, let's put a stop to the outdoor escape right now. And then maybe in the spring, we'll reopen it. But really what happened is all these ideas that we came up with, we would not have come up with if we weren't shut down, if our hands weren't tied against our backs and we had to think and we had to get scrappy. And during this time, Kiara and I, we kind of thought, when we do reopen, what are some things that the business is lacking that we can improve on? So this whole last year, she's been focusing on the technology side of things, on how do we get more automation into the rooms? How do we, build up the technology aspect? I focus on the marketing part. So that way, when we can reopen, we can start selling even better. And I think like we've tried every avenue possible other than putting an escape room in your email. And that might be coming soon, but we'll have to wait and see. This has been a real challenge for us. And just every time when an obstacle has hit us, we took the hit. We put bandages on, we try to lick our wounds, and then, pick up ourselves by our bootstraps and be like, okay, how do we figure this out? How do we go past this obstacle? How do we still do this and do it safely? And we've gotten to the other end. So we're happy to finally be here. We opened up a few weeks ago, and people want to come out and do escape rooms again, which we're really excited to have people come out. So very happy to be here.
Oh, well, we're glad you're still here too, Calvin. It's great fun. And at the end of today's presentation, we will post how you can learn more about each of our speakers' businesses. So we'll provide that to everybody who's on today's call. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our final speaker so that we can get to the Q&A session. But it is, last but least, I am thrilled to have the honor to introduce to you our next panelist, who is not only an entrepreneur, but still is a student at Fresno State, graduating this May. And our panelist's name is Allie Valines. Allie, if you can join us. Allie is currently, as I mentioned, a senior at Fresno State, majoring in public relations. We are keeping our fingers crossed that things will continue to open up and that there will be some type of a graduation for Allie come one way or the other come this May. In addition to being a full-time student, Allie is the CEO of the clothing company Majored in Sorority. During this past year of COVID, Allie rebranded her company into a lifestyle brand, I Am Lifestyle. She's published a book and as well began her own podcast, all during this pandemic. Allie will share how she took an unplanned situation created by COVID and pivoted her business in a different direction. It is my great pleasure to introduce Allie Valines. Allie.
Thank you, Mindy, for that. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Like Calvin was saying, it is so much fun to be on the other side of this. I had attended all the Pay It Forward events back in person and have loved being a part of this. So I'm so excited to be here today and share a little bit about me with you guys. So just to give you a little background of who I am. So my name is Allie. I am a student still at Fresno State. So I am in all of your guys' shoes. I am majoring in public relations and I will be graduating in the spring. So just to give a little bit of a background on kind of where I started and where I am now, I did previously own a clothing brand called Majored in Sorority that targeted towards the Greek audience at Fresno State and among just all colleges nationwide. And so when I had started that company originally, it was started out of my dorm room, actually, my freshman year. I ran it for 3 years. And then as any entrepreneur normally does, you kind of get an itch for, well, what's next? And, you know, how do I want to grow my company and how can I scale this? And you either really know off the bat, like this is kind of where I want to take my company in the direction I want to go in, or you start to think, gosh, I don't know if I can get there with this company. And then that's when you talk about, okay, well, what do I want to do different? Do I want to do a rebrand? What does that even look like? So to give a little bit of a background with Majored in Sorority, when I had started that, it was an amazing experience. It taught me everything I needed to know about business. It allowed me to be creative, taught me everything about networking. That's actually how I got involved with, you know, the Lyle Center, EMP at Fresno State, the hatchery, everything like that. And so I'm forever grateful for that experience. And as I was growing that and kind of preparing myself for what do I want to do post-graduation, how do I want to run this and, you know, make this a full-time thing? And is this something I want to do full-time? I wanted to kind of put my business in a position that was more of an inclusive market rather than exclusive. And when you're running a business, this is really good to know with, you know, what is your target audience? What is your like niche market? And it's really good to like identify that. But if you want to grow in any way, you've got to have kind of a plan on, can I grow my target audience? Can I scale in any way? Or am I kind of set in this, you know, market? It's not a negative thing to have a niche market. But for me personally, I was like, I kind of want to really adapt and be able to sell and grow among all platforms rather than just Greek apparel. And so with that being said, I don't know why I decided to have the courage to do an entire rebrand during quarantine, but to be fair, I had this itch to do something new kind of around December, and then started to kind of plan it, formulate it, talk to, you know, just some of my mentors and be like, what do you think about this? You know, am I crazy for this? And then when we really were like, okay, let's do it, COVID hit. And so I was like, well, I still have this plan. And as any entrepreneur would tell you, normally if you've already got that plan formulated, you're moving on it. It doesn't really matter your circumstances. Specifically for me, I don't, once I start to think of something, I'm like gonna do it. And so I had actually taken quarantine as a positive thing to really sit, be focused, not have all this outward kind of noise and chaos and busyness. And I just really told myself, all right, you got to really formulate what you want to do and get those ideas executed. So I knew with this rebrand, I wanted to do things that I never did with Majored in Sorority. And so rebranding into I Am Lifestyle, it's a self-affirmation lifestyle brand. And so with that being said, we highlight different words. We, you know, highlight like loved, enough, worthy, beautiful, capable, valued, all those different things. And we release seasonal collections of words. And, you know, we rebranded the entire website and the Instagram, the story behind the brand, everything. And so with that being said, there was a lot going into it. And I knew I wanted to write a book. I knew I wanted to start a podcast. And I knew with Majored in Sorority, something I always did was obviously clothes. It was a clothing brand. And I've always had a passion for fashion and retail and clothing and all of that. So I wanted to keep that also with I Am Lifestyle, and just kind of grow it into a different direction. So when I wrote my book, I was like, one thing I want to do with this brand is encourage people to share their story. So I was like, well, I can't really encourage other people to share their story if I don't share mine. And so the whole idea of I Am Lifestyle is a platform, and it's community based, of everyone being able to feel like they can share their story and that they can speak up about what their I Am is and how your I Am might change in different seasons of life. Because in one season you might be really strong, but then in another season you might be really confident, and that might be something more kind of relevant in your life. And so when I wrote that book, I was like, you know what, we're just going to start. We're going to start with a Word document. We're going to research a little about what self-publishing is like, and we're just going to get kind of the questions that we need answered. So we pumped out a book. It is actually sold on my website and also on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. So you guys can definitely order a copy and pick it up, and you'll get an idea of what the brand is about, kind of how to share your story if you're like, I don't know even where to begin, and just how to kind of have those hard conversations that with yourself, with others, that, might be difficult to even think about sometimes. And it's all kind of in a relatable sense. I've been there. I wanted to share mine and let you guys know that like I've done it and that you can do it. And so we also did launch a podcast, which is something I did want to do as well with this rebrand. And that's been exciting. We're coming up on a season 2, coming up in April, actually. So if you guys head on the podcast, it is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You'll see all of season 1. And we just go over like really encouraging, relevant things in life. And like, it's okay if we don't have it all figured out and different things like that. And so with that kind of all being said and introducing that rebrand, I wanted to really talk to you guys about, the word resilience and how we've been talking about that through this entire podcast or, speaking engagement here today, and just chat about, being an entrepreneur, you really have to kind of almost roll with the punches, and you really do have to stick up for what you believe in and what you want, to be a part of your company and a part of your brand. And you have to really stick up for that. And I think COVID is a great example, as everyone has shown. You really have to just reframe your focus and really kind of, move your steps a little, but not your entire idea. So don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it scare you. Let it really empower you, and take a lot of things that COVID has created, i.e. social media marketing and all this new technology that has came about from COVID. Let that really go into your new business ideas and models, and encourage that, and just reframe the way you do things, but don't ever let it stop what you do. I know that we're probably getting a little short on time. I want to make sure there's time for Q&A, but if anyone would ever like to connect, I do have my info here. I'm super excited to share with you guys. I'm a student just like you. And so for me, I learned it just as much as you're learning it now. And so I would love to chat more with you guys if anyone has any questions. But thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Allie. We will be sharing, we'll be doing a post-session mailer, and we will put everybody in contact and give details on how you can reach out to our various speakers today. But I'd like everybody, if they could, to rejoin all of our speakers, if they could turn on their videos and come back on the screen. And if you could show your videos, we have several questions. And I think, Calvin, there we go. Do we have everybody on? Kathy, are you on too?
Yes.
Okay, there you are. I see you now. Okay, the first question I have, I think probably all of you could address it. You've made, most of you, all of you have made changes during this period of time. Jim, how many of the changes do you think that you've made with your organization, how many do you think you'll continue doing when things get back to whatever we consider our next normal to be?
Well, I think quite a few, actually. I think for sure we've had a lot of requests to keep the big wagon going. I don't know where, but no, there's going to be quite a few things that we're going to do. I know the restaurant is, doing their family dinners still, and they're going to continue to do stuff like that. We're going to do some things. It really opened our eyes. I mean, it was a difficult thing. It was like, where are we going to be? A year ago, we were just wondering if we'd even be sitting here right now, to be perfectly honest with you. So it did help that way. But I tell you, we had grown. You have, as long as we've been in business, and it's over 70 years, really, since my father began the restaurant industry, you have a growing appreciation for your employees. And that's what we need to try to do over the years. That's why we're fortunate to have so many of them to this day continue to work with us, even though they haven't hardly had as much work as they probably should.
Thank you, Jim. For, I guess this would be for all of you, what is the biggest change you are most grateful for? And why don't we go ahead and start with Monisha?
Can you repeat the question? Why is my
Yes.
screen frozen?
The question is, what is the biggest change you are most grateful for during this period?
The biggest change that I'm the most grateful for,
That you've had to make during this period.
being able to be more disciplined. Me having to move out of my house and move into a warehouse to manage a team allowed me to grow. That's why I said earlier, personally and professionally as well. But it made me be more disciplined and take my business a lot more serious. And I feel like me making the conscious decision to actually do that, because I could have easily let everything go. But to me, that was the best decision that I've made.
Thanks, Monisha. Is there anybody else that would like to chime in on that?
Mindy.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say, I think that just having life slowed down. I mean, having everything slowing down, not having as many events, not having as many community events to go to. I think that allowed us to take time to really listen to each other. And being that we were communicating by either email or telephone or Zoom, we really had to listen to each other a lot more. We weren't in front of people, so we couldn't just assume we knew what they were saying. It wasn't as easy to communicate, so just listening. And it empowered us more, I think. And I think life slowing down and our ability to listen better. I think those two things we really got out of the pandemic.
That's a great point. I think, Allie, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna just chat about all of the technology that we've advanced just in quarantine and how owning a small business, it's one of a special time where, like, you know, you can invest so much in your company without spending a dime, and think about all the technology you can advance yourself with marketing and reach so many people worldwide without having to, you know, invest money in that. I think through COVID, so many new apps have started, so many new people have been more into the influencing world, and that's helped immensely with small business reach out and marketing.
This is a question for all of you. And, you know, given that you've all pivoted one way or the other and launched forward, did you have any internal groups that you bounced ideas over with? And did you participate in a group outside of your business to share ideas? Who would like to take that one on?
Yeah, well, we did, obviously. We did some different things, like I said, the food distribution, the grocery program, things like that. So we were fortunate enough to have some of our purveyors that have a lot of knowledge of things like that. It really helped us through this whole thing. So, and of course, in our business, you know, it's a very people business. I know Kathy's happy about not having all these parties, but she used to be in charge of 90% of the ones we did. Which we had, to be honest with you, Kathy, but I'm sure that day will come again someday. And I know you've been involved with La Police and everything over the years, but those are the ones that we're going to miss personally. But I think people really want to. Truthfully, I think people do want to have some of that social activity back.
Right.
You know, so you can have a blending of the things that you talked about, and I think everybody will be happy.
Did you, Calvin, one of the questions that kind of ties into this one is that you referred to we a lot in when you presented your information. Who is we?
Yeah, so
And who is your team and how does that team work?
yeah, so we are a very, very small team. And by we, I mean me and my partner, Kiara. She is also my girlfriend. But no, we do everything together, and we absolutely love spending time every day working and building our business together. We kind of have different roles per se, but we don't specifically say like you're the HR person or you are the CTO or the CEO for that matter, where we like to be a little bit more flexible. Like we do have different responsibilities. Like for instance, I'm primarily on game design while Kiara focuses on the tech side and the paint side of things, because I can't tell paint apart, but she can, and she's really good at interior design. But I do great at the game design aspect, and I do great at the marketing aspect, and she does really great at working with our employees. We do have 3 staff that come out and help run the games, but we are looking to onboard more people. So if you're a college student and you want a fun job, possibly the most fun job in the world, you can reach out to me.
Thanks, Calvin. We do have a number of other questions, and what I'd like to do is I'm going to pause the question and answer period because Kathleen, we're going to go back to Kathleen for a few minutes. She has a hard stop at 1:30. But for those of you who would like to stay on a little longer and address some of the questions that we haven't gotten able to get to yet, we can go a little bit past 1:30 if you want to stay on with us. But if right now I could turn it back over to Kathleen Scott, who's going to give us a couple of suggestions on what we could try to possibly make this whole change process a little bit smoother. Kathleen?
Oh, thank you, Mindy. And I don't know how you did it, but boy, did you assemble an extraordinary panel of wise, resilient, innovative, creative professionals who are so deeply committed to their work. I am inspired. I hope my friends from University Communications and the Alumni Society are on this call so that they heard all these stories and can continue to retell them, because really there was just some extraordinary lessons and moments and sharing. And I'm grateful to have been a part of this panel to hear all of that. So I want to leave you with the 5 P's of change. I'm not going to put up my slide, but I'm going to talk about 5 P's of change that I think were so beautifully illustrated in the stories we just heard from Jim and Monisha and Kathy and Calvin and Allison. The first P is purpose. When we are navigating change, we have to remember our purpose. What is our why, right? And so when just think of Fresno State and how the university navigated the change, never for a moment did our leadership forget our mission to boldly educate and empower our students for success. How we delivered to that mission looked very different over the past year, but never did we lose focus on our purpose. The stories you just heard were deep commitments to purpose, right? Making sure we fed our customers, we kept our employees with a paycheck and working. We served our consumers by getting creative on how we delivered things like an escape room. I mean, just a deep, deep commitment to purpose. So that's your first P. The second is when we're navigating change, always have a picture in your mind, cast a vision. What is it going to look like in that future state that we explored earlier? I'm in a current state, I'm transitioning through this messy middle. What is my future state going to look like? Cast it for yourself and share it with others. Sometimes it's not super clear. As we navigate the pandemic, none of us know what post-pandemic higher ed will look like, or all of the businesses we just heard from, but cast the vision as we begin to see it. The third thing is plan. And I heard so many elements of really sound planning in the stories we just shared. Baby steps, incremental planning. As I plan a move across country, I can't tell you how important that planning component has been to keep my sensibilities and sanity. So plan. The fourth is part. What is my part? So whether you're navigating the change yourself and having that internal conversation is, how am I going to choose to respond? Am I going to kick and scream and punch the wall and put my head in the sand? I don't want to deal with the change. Or am I going to choose to have a positive energy and attitude and get creative and innovative in how I embrace the change and thrive with the change? What is my part? And it's not just the internal part that we roll, but even the part that we play for supporting others that are experiencing the change. And so what I would say is, do not forget the fundamentals of caring and connecting, because change is hard. We experience loss when we go through change. Many gains along the way, of course, but change is hard. So maintaining care and connection for those around us that may not be thriving in the moment, and maybe finding that messy middle harder than others, care and connection is critical. So remembering what our part is and experiencing it personally and helping others through the change. And the last P is perspective. And again, just so beautifully articulated by the panel, choosing how we respond, maintaining positivity, resilience and grit, and so many success stories. Mindy, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your panel today in this conversation. I do have a new job and a 1:30 appointment, so that's why I have to cut out. So I'm so grateful. Wish you all the best.
Okay, Kathleen, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge on change. And I'm thinking that maybe we can follow up with this session today by sending out a follow-up message to all the attendees on some of the things that we weren't able to touch upon in your presentation. But go forward to your new responsibilities. Thanks, Kathleen. Nice to have you there. So for those of you who can stick around, and for the attendees, I know we're losing a few that had other obligations at 1:30. I did want to be able to address, there's a few other questions, and if for those that are still sticking around, I would love to spend about another 5 minutes if it's possible with you, 5 to 10 minutes. If the speakers need to leave, I totally understand that. And if the attendees need to leave, I understand that as well. But I just want to make sure that we have an opportunity, because the questions have been marvelous, and I just want to make sure we get a few more in. One of the questions that was asked was, we're hearing a lot about Europe experiencing this third or fourth wave, and things are closing down again there. Are you concerned that we're going to see another wave? And if so, what are you going to do? What are your plans to do to be allowed to continue to do the things you're doing now? Will you continue to do the same things, or will you continue to change? What are your thoughts on that? Kathy, do you want to start? Who would like to
I can
do?
go.
Okay.
Yeah. So my first thought is that we are vaccinating really, really quickly, which is awesome. We're really, really lucky, and the US is getting many, many more vaccines than many other countries, which we should be grateful for. So hopefully, if there is like a third wave that comes here, or a second wave that hits the US, I don't know what wave we're on right now, but hopefully if there is a new wave, we have enough immunity to where it won't affect us as much. But if it does affect us that much, if there's a variation that changes whatever it is, we're gonna do an escape Fresno, whatever it is. We're gonna do it big, and we'll find a way to keep doing what we're doing.
Thanks, Calvin. Is there anybody else? We'll wrap up with this question, because I am losing some attendance, and I know everybody has busy afternoons. But is there anybody else who would like to address this particular question?
I'll go. Right now, we're still all e-commerce. All of our orders are placed online, and we don't do any deliveries right now. But we might resume deliveries. But also, we're working on an app where people will have some form of digital wellness. So I think, for the most part, we'll still continue to do the same. We'll do some tweaks here and there if there is another wave. Our business really doesn't depend on public being in the public like that unless we're doing pop-ups or something like that.
Great, thanks, Manisha. Anyone else?
I think that the way we started now using new technology, new apps, the flipping book, I think that all of those are just going to continue to advance in our office. And I think that the pandemic is still out there, and I don't think that any of us should let our guard down. And I think that, you know, we have to be aware and be alert for anything that can happen. So I think we're still gearing up and thinking about what will happen next. And I also just want to reassure Jim, I will do any fundraiser anybody wants to do. So just send them my way and I'll hire you.
You do anyway, so I appreciate that very much.
Jim or Allie, did you want to add anything on to that question? Are you prepared for the long haul here if we need to keep on going, or what are your thoughts?
You know, one thing I was going to add in, and it's easier for me to say than, you know, running an online business and doing like e-commerce and everything like Manisha was saying is, you know, pretty adaptable with COVID. But I think as a general stance, being an entrepreneur and when you own a business, it's always good to be aware and prepared. If anything like this happens, you always want your company to be able to be in a position that it can like adapt to any environment. And so I think this has been a really vital thing for business owners, because it's kind of been like, you know, you got to be able to adapt or you're not going to be able to survive kind of thing. And so I think a good thing for anyone listening that's like, oh, well, maybe I want to start a business, but I'm a little intimidated in COVID, is don't be intimidated. Like, everyone that owns one should also know how to adapt in circumstances like this. And our mission is always still to like make a difference in our community. And so you just kind of phrase it and shape it in a different way. But I think we're all still able to manage our common goal and achieve that.
Great, thanks, Allie. Are there any further comments that any of the speakers would like to make before I wrap things up? If not, I just want to tell each of you how great, how much I appreciate you taking the time to be here today and sharing your stories so authentically and honestly with our attendees today. I really have valued having each of you here, and I can't thank you enough for your participation. And I just wish we had another half an hour because I didn't get to all of the questions, but I'm going to forward them on possibly and do a follow-up email with some of the answers to them. So for all the attendees out there, if you did not get your questions answered, hopefully we can help resolve that with a follow-up. Anyway, I thank you all for being with us. And I did want to share information about our next event. Our next event is going to be very different. We're moving away from COVID for a while. And we are going to bring in on April 28th, Soma Norodom, who is the Royal Rebel, as she refers to herself. She's a Fresno State alum and a Cambodian princess. And she is going to share her professional and personal journey with us. And it's extremely interesting. She has written a book most recently about that. And she's going to talk to us about, you know, how she returned to Cambodia to take to claim her title as princess and her journey before then and after. So I hope that you can join us. It's going to be April 28th at 12 o'clock, and we will be sending out an announcement about that, but I'm really looking forward to it. And again, thank you all for joining Pay It Forward at Fresno State. We will continue to do webinars until it is time that we can all join back up again in the Satellite Student Union for lunch and conversation. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's going to be sometime hopefully in the fall. But until then, we'll continue to do webinars, and many thanks to our guest speakers and to all of you who gave up time and decided to spend time with us today. So thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.